Hello, we're Lilith and Lara here with Coffee, Cakes, and Castles, where we will be covering the 20,000 to 25,000 castles of Germany. We'll be talking about historical facts, myths, legends, and drama.
Today, we're diving into some fascinating history, some of which we've heard of before, and some that is totally new. Listen along as we talk about the Braunschweiger Schloss and the birthplace of a queen, Schloss Richmond, all housed in our favorite city. Yeah, we are a bit biased. It's Braunschweig.
Hello, I'm Lilith from America.
And I'm Lara from Germany, and we're just two girls who happen to love all things involving coffee, cakes, and castles, especially when you can have coffee and cake inside a castle. And today we're heading back to Braunschweig with a look at two palaces. Let's dive into the Braunschweiger Schloss and Schloss Richmond. And I have to say, I've been sick for like quite a long time. That's why my nose sounds a bit weird. I'm sorry, guys, but you'll just have to cope with it.
Yes, and we will get through it and learn some interesting facts.
We will.
And we're going to start with some general information on the Braunschweiger Schloss. You can visit the Schloss Museum from Tuesday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and they offer guided audio tours, and you'll be able to see some of the rooms in the original furniture. And parking is easy. There's a parking garage. You can also walk, bike, or take the bus. And it's attached to the Schloss Arkaden, which is a shopping mall that was opened in 2007. And we spent a lot of time there.
We did. When you
We
first
did.
came, it was so cool to have like a mall like they do in America. And it was pretty special because we never had it. It was just built and it was pretty cool spending time there, right?
Yes. And so Laura and I have known each other now for 20 years,
Oh my
which is kind of crazy just to think about.
So crazy.
Um, yeah, and I do have to say though, the mall there is a little bit different than the ones here because I can't think of any mall in the United States that is attached to an actual castle.
No.
No.
Haven't seen that one before as well.
No. And I remember just being so like my mind was blown when you told me. You were like, "Oh, like this is the castle." And also here's the shopping mall.
We can do both in one.
Yes, which
Yeah,
was very cool.
we've been shopping a lot there. It was so
Mhm.
much fun spending time.
Yes. And also we'll get into it, but we spent a lot of time drinking coffee and eating some great cake, and we can get into that at the end.
Now, let's get into what everyone is actually here for, the history of the palace. Before any palace stood on the site, the location was occupied by a medieval urban courtyard used by the Cistercian monks from Riddagshausen. They became known over time as the Grauer Hof, or in English, Grey Court, due to their dress. By the early 19th century, the Brunswick dukes thought a proper city residence and planning for a new ducal palace began around 1715. Just of note, you can still see the Riddagshausen Abbey just outside the city of Braunschweig. It was founded by ministerialists of Heinrich der Löwe, and it's really pretty. We have two lakes close by, and you can walk around. And if it's sunny and the weather is good, everyone is walking around those lakes. And in wintertime, you can skate on it. So,
Oh.
yeah, it's really pretty. We had lots of snow this winter and lots of ice, and people were spending lots of time there. Well, back to the palace. The construction of the first palace began in 1718 by ducal master builder Hermann Korp. He began transforming the Grauer Hof into a Stadtschloss. During the reign of Duke August Wilhelm, there were major components added, including inner wings and a palace chapel in 1724. The beginning of the central block in the 730s, the other wing, like the south wing, was completed during his time. And in 1752 to 1754, the northern outer ring was constructed by Martin Pelletier de Belfort, based on the plans of Hermann Korp. And the ducal residence was moved into the palace in 1753, though the palace was not fully completed until 1791.
And now for some drama. If you
Ooh.
remember if you remember our earlier episode, the House of Welf continued to rule long after Henry the Lion, and the people of Braunschweig were not always thrilled about it, and they certainly were not thrilled with Karl II, Duke of Brunswick. In 1830, the Braunschweiger Schloss was burned to the ground. So what happened? The immediate target of public anger was Karl II, Duke of Brunswick, head of the House of Welf. He inherited the duchy at 15 and was placed under the guardianship of George, Prince Regent of the United Kingdom and King of Hanover. The relationship was rocky from the start. Hanover defined the duchy's constitutional structure and even Karl's income as head of the House of Welf, so he made some changes, and Karl II rejected these changes, declaring the new constitution invalid and insisted on ruling as an absolute monarch, just as his father and the House of Welf had done for more than 1,000 years. In the summer of 1830, Karl II was in France when the July Revolution, or the Second French Revolution, broke out. When he returned to Brunswick, he announced that revolutionary tendencies would not be tolerated. According to the Schloss Museum of Braunschweig, Karl II was ungeliebt, or unloved, and this declaration only inflamed public anger. We have the Oxford academic describing the crowd that rose against him as handicraft workers and members of the city's lower orders, who were outraged that the arrogant young Duke Karl II had violated what they regarded as the obligations of a just ruler to provide work opportunities and grain subsidies in a time of bitter economic crisis.
And the situation escalated quickly. Karl II was attacked by stone throwers, and soon after, a large mob attempted to break into the palace. Sources described the night as a popular revolution, and noting that the citizens vertrieben den Diamantherzog Karl II. They expelled the Diamond Duke. It also emphasized that in der Revolutionsnacht brannte das Schloss komplett ab. In the night of the revolution, the palace burned completely down, and that die Waffentruppen griffen nicht ein. The guard troops did not intervene. Karl II fled ultimately to London, while the palace was left in ruins.
And his brother William arrived shortly afterward and was, in contrast, warmly received by the people. The uprising was considered a successful revolution because it was a forced change of power that led to a new constitutional order, and Karl II was formally declared incapable of governing. And in April 1831, William became the ruling Duke of Brunswick.
Yeah. And in 1833, construction of a new palace began in its place. Designed by Karl Theodor Ottmar, it was completed in 1841. Ottmar's new Schloss was designed in a neoclassical or late classicist style.
And inside the Schloss, Ottmar's palace followed the traditional hierarchy of European and court architecture, with ceremonial halls, reception rooms, and grand staircases designed to impress, and a throne room to symbolize the center of authority. These spaces were not really meant for daily use. The primary function of the Braunschweiger Schloss was that of a residence of the Brunswick dukes from 1753 to 1918, where ceremonial architecture played a central role. Other rooms served more practical functions. There were audience chambers for formal meetings, salons for social gatherings, administrative offices for the ducal government, and private living quarters, which were comparatively restrained. This was not Versailles, and the Welf court in the 19th century balanced representation with practicality. So the interior was not quite as grandiose as some of the other palaces that we've talked about so far.
Really? But that leads us to the question, who actually lived and worked at the Schloss? Only a small number of people lived in the Braunschweiger Schloss at any given time. The ducal family spent parts of the year there, accompanied by high-ranking court officials, chamberlains, personal servants, but many more people worked that day. As a residence and administrative center of the duchy, the palace required clerks processing documents, guards controlling the access, craftsmen maintaining interiors, and cooks preparing meals for both family and staff. Because the Schloss stood directly in the center of Braunschweig. It was quite visible, and public ceremonies were visible. Arrivals and departures were noticed, and the building communicated hierarchy even when no words were really spoken. It was massive, like it was right in the middle of the city. So, yeah, everyone saw the Schloss.
Yes. And after 1918, the monarchy in Braunschweig ended and the ducal family left the Schloss. The palace may have lost its original residential purpose, but the building itself remained in use. During the Weimar period, the Schloss was repurposed for administrative functions, housing government departments, offices, and meeting rooms.
During the Nazi era, the Braunschweiger Schloss was not a residence, but a governmental and administrative tool. The building continued to serve state offices and official functions with its monumental classicist facade.
World War II brought severe destruction. The Schloss was heavily damaged during Allied air raids. The roof was destroyed. The interior is badly affected, though parts of the structure still stood, and reconstruction was possible, but it was politically charged.
Yeah. And by 1960, the city made the decision to demolish the remains of the Schloss. And the Schloss Museum Braunschweig explains that the reasons were both practical and political. The building was really expensive to maintain, and its symbolism was contested, and its future function was unclear. With its demolition, Braunschweig lost a visual center, a historical anchor, a space that had shaped civic life for more than a century. And the site was cleared, and for the first time since the 18th century, the city center stood without its defining landmark.
And for decades after 1960, the Braunschweiger Schloss existed in memories, photographs, and personal stories. But the space where it once stood had become a public square, and for many citizens, the empty area felt unfinished. Older residents remembered the palace vividly, and the city center was lacking a visual anchor. So the question began to surface, was removing the Schloss really going to be the end of its story? And that question eventually led to the reconstruction of the palace facade between 2005 and 2007 using original stones salvaged from the 19th century building. And today, the rebuilt Schloss houses the Schloss Museum of Braunschweig, a library, commercial spaces. It blends memory, controversy, and modern urban life.
Yeah, that is true. And
Yes.
by the
And
late,
oh,
what?
sorry.
Go
Sorry.
on.
No, you had just mentioned, we've kind of talked about how there was some debate on whether or not the Schloss should be rebuilt. And you said that you grew up hearing your parents kind of talk about it. And this was something that, the people, there really kind of was a divide on what people
It
wanted.
was crazy. Like the people were really parted in that decision. There were people who said, no way, never ever. And they were really like doing demonstrations to not rebuild the Schloss. And it was crazy because my parents were standing in front of the park and they were demonstrating against the rebuild. And I grew up with my parents being against it, and my parents had a really strong opinion about it, and they always said, I'm not going into the Schloss. No way, never ever. Um, when it was rebuilt and it was new, they were never going into it. And if I asked them if you want to go to the city, they stayed strong and just went into the old city center, but never to the Schloss.
And do you know their reasoning of why they were against it?
Yeah, because they liked the park and they thought it was really amazing to have a big park in the middle of the city. It was, I don't know, they really liked it and they like nature and they are defending it. But I know that the park was like a controversial opinion as well, because some people said that in the park they sell drugs and there are like people drinking and that's why they don't want it. I don't know if my parents knew that at that time, but they like the thought of the park and the trees and all
Mhm.
that stuff, because there were like really big trees. And yeah, I think that it was more or less about the nature.
Okay, so kind of the taking away of natural spaces. And
Yes.
I think too, talking with your family, some of my visits. So I know too, kind of talking to people, building a mall there, it was also drawing away from the idea of like having a city center and kind of, small, like it's still a thing now talking about like supporting small businesses and things like
Yeah,
that. And
exactly.
I guess it was kind of like changing the landscape of Braunschweig, people kind of felt like.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Because it would take away lots of people going into the city center. It would put the people into the mall because they could do everything there. They don't have to go into the city, and small businesses would die. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, by the late 20th century, discussing about the rebuilding, the Schloss gained momentum as we talked about it. And this was not nostalgia alone. There were practical arguments. They said they needed a central urban space, economic revitalization, and architectural continuity. But there were also emotional ones. For many, the Schloss represented the city's long history, its role as a capital, and the big connection to Heinrich der Löwe. And at the same time, critics warned rebuilding could sanitize history, or worse, glorify power structures best left behind. And this debate would shape everything that followed. Eventually, a compromise was reached. The Schloss would return, but not entirely as it was. The historic facade would be reconstructed. The interior, however, would be modern. This decision mattered deeply, and it acknowledged the building's visual and symbolic importance without pretending time had stood still. The reconstructed facade followed historical plans closely. They had columns, proportions, ornamentations, but behind it, a contemporary structure emerged. This blend was intentionally. It forced the building to carry both past and present. And if you have a look at it, and we will put up some pictures, you can see that they like merged both. And
Hmm.
in my opinion, they did a good job because it's both, and you can see like the old structure, but next to it is like the new. But I don't know how you say it, but it merges perfectly and it
Hmm.
looks really good. So I think they did a good job about that.
And it also, because last episode when we talked about Dankvarderota, and how it doesn't necessarily, like a castle isn't necessarily the word that comes to mind when you're looking at it. I feel like the Braunschweiger Schloss, like that's what you think of kind of when you think of palace. It's
Yeah.
got that huge facade on the front. And then, like you were saying, it does a very good job of kind of merging like the old and the modern.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the new Schloss is not a residence. It's a public space. It's a mall, as we said. It's a commercial center and a cultural site. And inside you'll find like different shops, cafes, exhibition spaces. There's a museum, a library, and one detail many visitors notice: the contrast between the classical interior and exterior and modern interior. And as we said, this contrast is not accidental. It reflects a key idea. History can frame modern life without controlling it. And I love that. I love that for it because it gives all of the stuff like a meaning. And the Schloss is no longer a place where power lives. It's a place where people move, meet, shop, and pause. Okay. Most important question: is there coffee and cake? There's a cafe inside Heims where we really had like really good coffee, and it's
Yes.
from Braunschweig, and they have amazing cake, and Heims is like roasting their coffee in Braunschweig, and when you live nearby, my former best friend lived near to the coffee roastery, and it was always crazy how far the smell would come, and you could
Mhm.
really smell that on Tuesdays they roast coffee, which
Oh.
is really funny. Yeah, there are lots of cafes, but the Heims one
Mhm.
I would suggest is like the place to go.
Yes, I feel like we got more than one, like, kind of cake there because it all sounded so good, and so we
Yes.
chose a few. And they were really good.
Agree.
Um, and their drink selection's also amazing, so if you get a chance to go, and the coffee itself, like you were saying, the actual, like, the Heims, roast their own coffee. They've been doing so since the late 1800s. They've got it down. Like, it's
Yes.
really good, yes. And you can have lots of different things in the new Schloss, but the coffee and cake is definitely recommended. And now we are going to move on to Schloss Richmond, which also calls Braunschweig its home. And we'll start with the general information. You can find Schloss Richmond in the southern part of Braunschweig near the Oker River. Schloss Richmond is not freely open for casual visits. It's used for official events and private rentals and used by Braunschweig's registry office for weddings, which you had mentioned to me
Yes.
because you you said that would be kind of like your ideal
Yes, that
place to
would
get married.
been the ideal location where to get
Mhm.
your wedding, like the one you are not doing in the church or at home, the one Standesamt. I don't know what it's called in English. That is kind of the thing you
Mhm.
can choose from. You can go to in the middle of the city, or you can go to the Schloss Richmond, and I always picture me getting married there.
Nice. And yes, it is. I don't know if you have pictures of Schloss Richmond that we can put up, but it's such
Uh-huh.
a cute it's cute. Like, I don't know how there's probably
Yeah,
much better ways to describe it, but this compared to Dankvarderota, like you kind of have that really expansive it is a castle, but it looks like a fortress with kind of how expansive it is, and it includes like the square and everything like that inside of it. It's kind of contained that way. And then, you have the Braunschweiger Schloss, which like rises up and is kind of what you think of when you think of like a palace. And then you have Schloss Richmond, which we'll see if we can get pictures for you guys. But
yeah,
it's smaller than the other two in
definitely smaller.
Braunschweig. Yes. And it
Yeah.
is really pretty. Um, and it also has an English landscape park surrounding the castle that is open to the public. And it's one of the main reasons to visit. And so that you can just go and walk around. And then you can see the exterior of Schloss Richmond. And guided tours can be booked through the Braunschweig Tourist Information Office. It doesn't have the regular like walk-in visiting hours. And you can see the castle exterior, which is Baroque architecture from 1768 to 1769. And that was designed by Carl Christoph Wilhelm Fleischer. And the landscape design was influenced by Lancelot Capability Brown. Interesting name.
Yeah.
And then the park was restored to an English landscape garden, and it features ponds, winding paths, lovely tree groupings, and a small temple. And it says that it is especially beautiful in May during the rhododendron bloom. Um, and then the park and the lake are often considered to be a highlight. And you still worth a visit, even though the interior is not always accessible, just because the outside of the castle is very picturesque and you have the gardens that you can walk through. And it's best for photography, walking, picnics, nature, great for architecture lovers. And then a great stop if you're on a bike tour or just out on an afternoon walk. I'll let you
Definitely.
talk about like how to get there since you live here. Yes, I'll let you talk about that.
and it's quite easy to get there. It's located at Wolfenbüttler Straße, and it's easy reachable by car. There's a street parking nearby. You can go by bicycle. It's really pretty. You can go around in the park with a bike, and you can also use public transit within Braunschweig. If you want to go by bus, you can easily do that from the Braunschweiger Hauptbahnhof or the train station. So that is quite easy. And sometimes they host festivals, so make sure to check out their page because it's pretty cool. So yeah.
Yes, and also I found out that Schloss Richmond is considered a pleasure palace or
Oh,
Lustschloss.
interesting.
Yes.
We will jump into the history. Maybe we will find out why. So when you walk through the southern edge of Braunschweig, near the River Oker, like it's called Oker River, you'll find a small Baroque place with an English name, Schloss Richmond. When you walk through the southern edge of Braunschweig near the River Oker River, you'll find a small Baroque place with an English name, Schloss Richmond. Its story begins in Britain with Princess Augusta of Great Britain, the eldest sister of King George III. In 1764, Augusta married Karl Wilhelm Ferdinand, the future Duke of Braunschweig. As a gift to his new wife, he commissioned this pleasure palace. Construction began in 1768 and was completed just a year later. It was small, so that was quite easy, in 1769. The architect was Karl Christoph Wilhelm Fleischer, as Lilas already mentioned, and the estate was named Richmond after Princess Augusta's English home in Richmond Park, now the Royal Park in London. From the time that it was finished, Schloss Richmond served as Augusta's personal retreat. The city of Braunschweig describes it as her refugium, a place where she could withdraw from public duties and enjoy the surrounding landscape. Throughout her life in Braunschweig, Augusta used the palace primarily as a summer residence, hosting small gatherings and enjoy the grounds that surrounded it. After Augusta's death in 1813, Schloss Richmond remained part of the Brunswick ducal estate. Over the centuries, the palace and its ground continued to be maintained even as the city grew around it. The surrounding English landscape park, with its ponds, winding path, and distant garden temple, was restored in modern times, preserving the atmosphere Augusta once enjoyed. And today, Schloss Richmond no longer serves as royal household. Instead, it has taken on a new role in the life of the city. The restored palace is used for representative purposes and rented for public and private events, and even serves as a venue for civil wedding ceremonies through Braunschweig's registry office. That is what I was looking for, civil wedding ceremonies.
Yeah, there we go. There's the word.
There's a word for it. So Schloss Richmond stands as a reminder of Princess Augusta's life in Braunschweig. And I think it's so amazing to get to know that, because it was always a place for me, but I never knew about that. And the research made me and you get to know about everything about Schloss Richmond. And I think that's really cool.
Yes, and that's part of the reason why we love doing this, because we
Yes.
get to find out all the cool, interesting things we would not have known otherwise if
Yes,
we weren't doing this
never.
podcast. And let's talk about the architecture of Schloss Richmond. The style has been described as Baroque. Okay, I might need your help pronouncing this one.
Try it.
Oh gosh. Okay, here I go. Forgive me, and Lara will correct me, I am sure. Spätbarock im Übergang zum Frühklassizismus.
Frühklassizismus. But it's quite good.
Frühklassizismus.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have to say that my conversational German does not include architectural terms.
No.
So late Baroque transitioning to the early Classicism is what that means. And this places the building at a stylistic crossroads. So it has the Baroque elegance with the cleaner, more restrained lines that would define early Classicism. And Carl Christoph Wilhelm Fleischer, as I mentioned earlier, was the architect who designed the palace. And then also, Laura, you had mentioned kind of why this is considered a Lustschloss, or
Yeah.
Lustschloss. Yes. So it was primarily used just for their leisure. And it was designed as such. And other contributors were Christian Gottlob Langwagen. He assisted with the architecture, and then mentioned before Lancelot Capability Brown, and his influence was on the landscape design. And then inside of the palace, we have a square floor plan. Entrance is placed at one corner, and then staterooms are arranged diagonally across the building. And there are private rooms and a mezzanine floor on either side. And then this diagonal axis is a distinctive feature, giving the small palace a sense of ceremonial progression despite its compact size.
Yeah, and now we will jump into the
s-
building type and function. And Bauwissen identifies Schloss Richmond as a Sommerschloss, a summer residence, a Wohnbau und I can't speak German as well.
Perfect. Not just.
I thought it was English, and then I was like, no, that's not English. Okay. So es ist Sommerschloss, a summer residence, and a Wohnbau- und Repräsentationsbau, residential and representational building. This explains its scale, because if you see pictures of Schloss Richmond, you'll see that it isn't very large. Schloss Richmond was designed as a refined, intimate retreat. It was constructed out of, according to Bauwissen, Massivbau, solid masonry construction, built of Kalkwerkstein. It's a lime-based stone, Quaderwerk, Ashlar masonry, and originally it had a flat roof.
Which
So
is interesting.
yes, really picture a castle with like a flat roof, but
Mhm.
okay.
Yes, because now, like, if you look at it, it's that nice, like, curved
Yes.
building. Yes.
And these details confirm that Richmond was built as durable, high quality structure despite its small footprint. And of course, we have to talk about the park. While not part of the building itself, the park is inseparable from the architectural concept. The palace is surrounded by an English landscape. The design reflects the influence of Capability Brown, and this landscape style was meant to complement the palace's elegant, restrained Baroque form. And Schloss Richmond, or at least the family involved, wasn't without drama. As we always
Yes.
find the dramas really interesting. Schloss Richmond may look serene today, tucked beside the Oka River in Braunschweig, but the woman it was built for, the Princess Augusta of Great Britain, lived a life filled with tension, scandal, and heartbreak. Her life had a dramatic beginning with her father lying to his parents about his wife's due date, and then smuggling her out of Hampton Court Palace to avoid his parents witnessing her birth due to his difficult relationship with them. This was a huge deal at that time, as it was customary for family members to be present, and the birth was also dramatic, as St. James Palace was not ready for them, and Princess Augusta was born on top of a tablecloth. Princess Augusta was given an education, and eventually it was decided that she was to wed her second cousin, Karl Wilhelm Ferdinand, the Duke of Braunschweig, Wolfenbüttel. This arrangement was initially opposed by her mother, and Augusta arrived in Germany in 1764, newly married to Karl Wilhelm Ferdinand, or Charles Wilhelm Ferdinand, the future Duke of Braunschweig. Their marriage, however, was deeply unhappy, and the Royal Collection Trust notes that the relationship deteriorated early, and Augusta's life in Brunswick was marked by emotional strain and isolation. Despite this, she did find her husband quite handsome, and at first did find them evenly matched, saying, No two people live better together than we do, and I would go through fire and water for him. And her personal troubles begin long before she came to Germany. According to a widely circulated historical summary, Augusta grew up in a household defined by parental infighting and public dysfunction. Her father, the Duke of Braunschweig, openly kept a mistress at their home. So in 1807, after the death of Princess Augusta's husband from wounds sustained at the Battle of Jena-Auerstedt, Augusta left Braunschweig and moved to Ranger's house in London. And English heritage records that she arrived there amid scandals surrounding her daughter, Caroline, Princess of Wales, who lived next door. And if you're wondering about the scandal her daughter was involved in, because we certainly were, she was embroiled in one of the most notorious royal scandals of the Regency era. Her marriage to the future King George V collapsed
Fourth?
in the the what?
Fourth?
Fourth, sorry. I can't read Roman
It's
numbers. I'm
okay.
so bad at it. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so the King George IV collapsed in the midst of allegations of infid-
Infidelity.
infidelity, and a child being born from wedlock, leading to the delicate investigation. Though no evidence of adultery was found, she was eventually exiled to Italy. Meanwhile, Augusta's own marriage had long been troubled, and her life in Braunschweig had been marked by periods of loneliness and tension, and she much preferred her life in Britain to her life in Braunschweig. So, while Schloss Richmond itself never hosted political conspiracies or battlefield drama, its inhabitant lived through royal feuds, marital breakdowns, and family scandal.
Yes. So their family, as we discovered, definitely some drama there. And it was at the time, like we said, some of this was some pretty big scandals that everybody at the time was aware of,
Yeah.
which is interesting. Yes. And no coffee and cake to be found at Schloss Richmond, but you can easily head into the city to one of Braunschweig's many cafes. And Lara, are there any kind of in that area, because this is southern, like to the south of Braunschweig, are there any in that area?
Well, it's kind of no, not really, because you have to go back into the city to go to a cafe. You can walk through the park, and that's quite a nice walk, and you will be in the city quite quickly, like 15 minutes. But like close by, there's none. No.
Okay. And yes, because
Yeah.
I remember like we drove by Schloss Richmond, and I remember you kind of like pointing it out to us. And it was kind of, it's a little bit out, still in Braunschweig, but just a little bit further from the city center than like the Schloss Arkaden or
Yeah.
the Braunschweiger Schloss or the Dankfreiderode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Yeah, it's on the way to go to Wolfenbüttel actually. So
Yes.
you want to go to Wolfenbüttel and look at the castles there. It's quite easy to go there and like just make a quick detour to Schloss Richmond.
Yes. That's when you pointed it out to us, was when we were on our way to Wolfenbüttel.
Yeah.
And yes, definitely check Wolfenbüttel out. We talked about it in one of our previous
Yeah.
episodes, and it's the
Lots of
town, yes. The town and
yeah.
the castle. Yeah.
So, guys, thank you for listening, and make sure to leave a comment if there's any German castle that you would like to hear about. We will definitely talk about it if you like give us a hint on what you want to listen to next.
Yes.
We have a big list, but we can always like choose one and choose the one you want to listen to.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you guys.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.